So here we are again, but this time we're not in France. We're in Beloit, Wisconsin, picking up this 1960 French Simca Chatelaine station wagon. I always like a good story when we pick up a car, and I'm sure this one has a great one. How did it get here? Why did it get here? We have no idea. And since there was no one there to tell us when we picked it up, this little Simca story is going to have to start today as it pulls into Cool Hand Customs and meets its new friend, the Cadillac. Lucky for the Simca, the Cadillac was the first one to go under the knife, and we went at it vigorously. There wasn't much planning going on here. It was just take the Sawzall and hack anything that doesn't belong and isn't going to fit and get rid of it.
Okay, so after many part replacements, digging in, wiring issues, well, I guess I can't really say wiring issues because the wires are just everywhere, but we had to replace a couple modules, reprogram one of the computers so it matched the other computer, and we have finally got to the point where I think we can have Jade hit that start button. Okay, ready? The one that says start. Alright, push her. And we have a running North Star. Alright, so he's just getting the last couple lines drawn for where he wants to start his cuts, because she's getting cut in half. And as he just said, there's no time better than the present.
We decided the best place to make up that 20 inches we needed was to cut the floor section out of the rear end of the Cadillac. Since there wasn't going to be a rear seat in this thing anyway, it was perfect, and the rails and all the sheet metal lined up in the same exact position on both sides.
Well, looks like we got a little bit of a fire. Okay, fire's out.
Completely unaware of the amount of metal that was holding this car together. At this point, I was just driven by beating the naysayers. There was no way this Cadillac was not fitting inside that Simca.
Halfway! Look at that thing. Hey, it's giving its all. What are you doing? Sorry, what was that?
So I'm going to save my last Sawzall blade to get these cut through. I'm going to need it, and I'm just going to cut the last 2 feet with the cut off wheel. All that foam we were seeing is smelling.
Well, this caddy is one step closer to being 20 inches shorter. Alright, these should be our last 2 cuts. And we will have officially lost 20.3 inches. And let me add, this is our very last Sawzall blade. Gentle. Not gentle. goes the last Sawzall blade.
Maybe reach it.
Not done yet. Okay, so since we are out of Sawzall blades, plan B.
Moral of the story, don't buy a crappy Sawzall.
Is a fresh new cutoff wheel. Hopefully it's long enough to get down into newfound layer of metal. Yay!
The difference between Cadillac and Simca.
Let's see how she fits together. Like a glove. Ooh, buddy. Come up a little bit on your other side, the driver's side. Look at this one. How nice that is.
I have a lot of sleepless nights building these things long before I actually get in there and start cutting and rebuilding them. So sometimes it seems like luck is just on our side when things like the drive shaft just happen to line right back up when we cut that 20 inches out of this thing. Now that the wheelbase was correct, I could start strengthening the front end, putting some stability back in now that we cut all that sheet metal out of here. We're going to build a full cage in the entire car once we get the body mounted, but for now I just want to get this front end together, make sure it's all going to fit under the Simca when we start sandwiching it back on there. With the donor chassis ready to go, it was time for the Simca to come in out of the snow and start chapter 2 of its story. At some point before we took possession of this car, someone had grand ideas. They took an old Triumph like TR6 frame and old 4-cylinder and they tried shoving it in there. They extended the frame and booger welded some angle iron here and there and just really did their best to try to make this thing go down the road. But none of that stuff was going to work for us. So we got out the Sawzall, the grinders, every tool in the box, and we got rid of that old junk and sent it off to cruise. A lift at this point would really just be a useless tool, so we took some old straps and we hung this thing from the ceiling until we had just enough room to fit that donor chassis we had worked on up underneath. Got rid of the windows, all the trim, the inner wheel wells, all of the framing that the old owner had welded into place, and got it all prepped, squared, and ready to go. The body shell itself was in fantastic condition. A few dents and dings here, not really any rust holes, just surface rust all over the place. And once we got all this old angle iron and tubing and stuff that the old owner welded into place out of there, this really started to look like a doable operation. Alright, so we've cut everything I think we need cut out of the inside of the car to set it on top of the Caddy. Of course, there's going to be tons of trimming, but this is where I wanted to be on that. I've got the roof skin cut with supports in it to hold it so it didn't get all wonky on us. And I've got it set down on the cart now. So my plan is to cut the non-stress points here first, and then we're going to strap this thing to the ceiling again and cut my inner supports so that we've got two hanging halves from the ceiling.
In two completely separate pieces. And she's kind of just hanging and floating here. Unreal.
So now is when the fun really begins. We got this thing in two completely different pieces, lifted one side up as high as we could get it so that we could slowly roll that Cadillac up underneath. And now it was just a matter of trimming. We'd slide the piece down into place, find out that this wheel well and this piece was going to have to go, cut it off, swing the piece back down into place, try it again, and just kept going until we've got the rockers to line up where we wanted it, the wheels to fit the wheel wells where we wanted. And just about the time we thought we had it nailed, we realized there just isn't going to be enough room in the back end for these wheels. Obviously, being this close, we weren't going to give up, so we just had to find some other way to get those wheels to fit. We took them off, got the body set in place where we wanted it, got a good chance to stand back and look at it. We knew this is exactly the position they needed to be, so we were just going to have to find some other way to make those wheels fit. With the cut line marked and a plan decided, we moved on to filling in the rest of the little gaps and trim around the rest of the car to slowly make it into one piece. Eventually I'd get in there and cut these wheel wells open and re-arch the openings so that those wheels would fit. One piece at a time. With the body finally welded to the donor pretty well and everything back together, most of its strength back in it, we could finally get to dealing with this wheel issue. So it was time to start cutting that apart.
So EJ is gonna slice open the rear end. We gotta make her a little wire so our tires fit.
This rear area of the car always seemed just a little bit flat and dainty anyway, and if we're putting American muscle in this thing, it was gonna need to have some hips. So we added that about 2.5, 3 inches back there. Gave us a really nice shape coming around the wheels, and it also matched up with the front fenders. Actually looked exactly how it should have been built when it came out of the factory in 1960. As nice as this fender looked without it, Caddy had a really good setup for the filler neck for this gas tank, so we got to chopping a hole in the side of that thing too. I really like to use a lot of the parts out of the donor vehicle as I can, incorporate them, hide them onto the older vehicle. This one had a really nice pop-open cap, so we went with it. This is the basic vision we had of the car. Here's a quick little walk-around mock-up of it. We've got a lot of little pieces to do. I've got to build the rockers tied in, get a hood built for it. We still have to fit and make and design a grill for the front end, get that front end out of the atmosphere and lower that down with some new shocks over QA1 and do something with this back end. Luckily we got about 3 sets of doors for this thing that I can chop, take apart, make it look nice.
Amy getting the welding knocked out on the inside and around the wheel wells, I started bending up panels for the bottom rockers to tie the car together on the outside. I found some fenders from a 55 Dodge that we used for the rear quarters back behind the wheels, and all that left was a nice little pan we'd have to build to surround and frame in the dual exhaust we were going to put in the rear. With a pile of leftover original parts from the Simca, a Corvair front bumper, and a little bit of sheet metal, we started bending and putting the front end back together. Our biggest hiccup was going to be figuring out what we were going to use to fill that grill for an insert. Eventually we settled on something that everyone would recognize, very reminiscent to the 57 Chevy. When we come back, we'll finish up the exterior fabrication, move on to the roll cage, and I can't wait for you to see what we did with the interior.